Okay, guys, so we'll make a start. So yeah, welcome along. Welcome along to week 7 of the course. So tonight the theme is mindfulness of others. Um, so we're going to do the usual program. Well, it's a slightly different program, in as much as we're going to be doing a little bit more meditation than we've done in previous weeks. So as we've done in previous weeks, we're going to start with meditation. We'll have our groups after that, a break, and we'll look at our theme in a bit more depth, and we'll explore it actually in meditation again. And then before we leave, we'll set up our home practice. So that's the plan for this evening. So I was talking last week about how we are organisms, we're living organisms. And part of what we're doing when we practice mindfulness is connecting with that, connecting with, in a way, the kind of raw feelings, the raw sensations, the rawness of being alive. It's so easy to lose touch with that. So quite a lot of things about modern life, the way we think about our lives, the things that we engage in, mean that we get cut off from just the raw sensations of living. So yeah, so mindfulness awakens those sensations. It makes us more in tune with, more connected to those sensations. And as we've been exploring, a key part of those sensations, our experience of the world, is this thing, Vedana, this aspect or this strand of our experience, which is Vedana. And mindfulness really intensifies that. In a way, mindfulness kind of turns up the volume. We really feel whatever it is that we're experiencing as pleasant, painful, or neither pleasant nor painful. So that comes into much clearer focus. Like I say, it's much more vivid. And what we're probably noticing is that most of our most intense Vedanas, our most intense feelings, our most intense sensations arise in relation to other people. That's when we're going to feel the most pleasure, the most pain, and maybe even the most boredom, the most neutral Vedana. So I just wanted to give you a little example of this, just in terms of pleasure. So this is a little excerpt from a poem by W.B. Yeats. It's called Friends, and he's basically recalling 3 of his friends and how what happens when he brings them to mind. So this is one of them. A little excerpt about one of those friends. It says, "When day begins to break, I count my good and bad, being wakeful for her sake, remembering what she had. What eagle look still shows, while up from my heart's root, so great a sweetness flows, I shake from head to foot." So great a sweetness flows, I shake from head to foot. So he's talking about very, very powerful, pleasant Vedana. So that's, like I say, often an example of how of an intense Vedana. We can also experience intense Vedanas of boredom, actually, in relation to other people, that we just want. Boredom in terms of other people, can very often turn into aversion. And then, of course, there's painful Vedana, where we find somebody's company just quite disagreeable. And again, that can very easily give rise to hatred. So what we're going to do in this meditation now is, in a way, explore bringing people to mind and just noticing what Vedana arises, what it feels like to bring people to mind. We're going to bring, I'll actually, what I'll do is I'll just lead through the practice. It's a little bit different to the mindfulness of breathing, in as much as we're actually going to be adding something to our experience. In a way, with the mindfulness of breathing, we're just there with whatever's there. We're just mindful of whatever's happening. But in this practice, we're actually going to be adding something. We're going to be bringing something to mind in the practice and then noticing what effect that has. So as I say, I'll lead us through this practice. So if you'd like to get into your meditation posture, and then in a moment we'll make a start. and beginning to notice what's happening. So it's as if you're trying to simply allow a natural curiosity to emerge, directed in the beginning to your surroundings. So there's your immediate surroundings, the room you're sitting in, the chair you're sitting on, the temperature of the room. And part of our surroundings is a little bit more intangible, but nevertheless part of the reality of what's happening now, and that's the fact that there are other people participating in this meditation. So having a sense of everybody else and you being part of that. And then awakening a sense of your body. Your body as a collection, as a myriad of different sensations and experiences. Including your breathing. So what's your body doing as you breathe? Particularly if you're agitated or anxious or a bit frazzled, tuning into your breathing will soothe your mind and your body. So opening up to what your body does as you breathe. Remembering that there's no right way or wrong way. We're simply opening out to the reality, the actual fact of our breathing. I've just realized I've been muted for the last little while, so sorry about that. So just tune into what's going on with yourself. Recognizing that there might be an element of puzzlement about what's going on because I've gone quiet for the last few minutes. And just feeling the atmosphere of your mind. The mood of your mind. With a sense of kindness and openness to who and what is going on for you right now. Whether that's a sense of constriction or expansion, a sense of gloom or a sense of brightness and hope. Maybe you're bored, or maybe you're engaging quite well. And just trusting in the power of awareness to effect whatever transformation is needed. Particularly breathing into the heart. Into that area which represents the core of our being. The seat of emotion and volition. And then I'd like to invite you to bring to mind a friend of yours. So somebody that you like, somebody whose company you enjoy. And call them to mind just in whatever way feels natural to you, whether that's an image or the sound of their voice. You might say that person's name. So you're trying to evoke their particularity, their character, what they're like. Their physical appearance, maybe, but not necessarily, but particularly their qualities. So if your mind wanders, just refreshing a sense of that person and noticing in your body what that's like or how it feels to bring them to mind. It might feel like quite a lot, or it might feel like not much. It might feel pleasant. It might feel unpleasant. It might feel neither pleasant nor unpleasant. It might be quite intense and loud, or it might be quite subtle and quiet. So what's it like to bring that person to mind? So now letting that person move into the background. So you're just there with what you are right now. If you need to anchor yourself, you could tune into your breathing. So now I'd like you to think of a person who you see fairly regularly, whose life overlaps with your life. It might be a neighbor. It might be the barista in your coffee shop. It might be a work colleague or someone you see regularly on the street. But someone that you don't feel strongly attracted or repelled by. So they're just there, as it were. So they're neutral. So bringing that person to mind. Again, doing that so they're as vivid to you as possible. So that person's life is completely independent of your life. So noticing how how it is to bring them to mind, how it feels in your body, in your mind, by way of Vedana. And if you wander off and start thinking about something else, seeing if you can refresh your awareness of that person, remind yourself who it is, and then again notice what it's like to have them there. And it might feel like hardly anything at all, and that's okay. So you're not trying to produce some special kind of feeling. You're just trying to notice whatever feeling is there. So you're aware of the other person and aware of your response to them. And then let that person move into the background. And again, just tuning into how you are, particularly tuning into the heart, that area. And then bring to mind someone that you find difficult in some way. Maybe you feel that they've wronged you. Maybe you feel like they're harming you in some way, or they've harmed you in the past. Maybe it's someone who's close to you, who you live with, or a friend, or a work colleague, but someone that you find difficult, and bring them to mind. And notice what happens when you bring them to mind. How does it feel? What does your body do? What happens with your thoughts and the atmosphere of your mind? Where are you now with your mind? And now just let go of trying to think about anything or anyone in particular, and just relax, just sit with whatever is arising without directing things, without evaluating things. So just bringing the meditation to a conclusion. Sorry again about switching the mic off. There's a bit of noise outside the room and I forgot to switch it back on. So just before we go into the groups, I just wanted to say a few little things about what we just did. And I'll just do that with the help of a screen share. Give me a moment. So what we were doing there is we did an aspect of what's called the Metta Bhavana, which is a meditation practice. It's one of the two main practices that we teach to newcomers in our Buddhist community, the Truyatna Buddhist community. And it consists of 5 stages. So what we did is we kind of explored 3 of the stages. So I'll just go through the whole practice because we'll do it later on, and I'd like you to just have a bit of a sense of the different aspects of it. So you should be able to see that now. So the first part of this practice is metta means basically kindness, and bhavana means development. So really what we're doing when we cultivate metta is we're cultivating a particular kind of chitter, a particular kind of mind, a mind that is connected to, which feels a solidarity with other people. Yeah. So this is, I'll say more about this after the break, but that's what metta is. Metta is a quality of mind. It's kindness, you could say, the most fundamental virtue, even, I think you could say. So that's what we're doing when we do this practice. And bhavana means development. So we're cultivating this quality of mind. We're cultivating metta. We're cultivating love and kindness. And it starts with awareness of oneself and a care and a concern for oneself. Now that might seem like something that's quite difficult, but really that care for yourself is why you're still here on this 8-week course on week 7. That care for yourself is what brings you here. It's the fact that you know that you need to do things to benefit you. So you already have it. It's just a matter of connecting with it. So what we did before is we just basically connected with what was going on without getting too complicated about it. The second part of the practice is where you bring to mind a friend, and you develop metta for them. Again, we didn't quite do that just there. We just brought to mind a friend to see what that was like to do. Then there's a neutral person. You bring to mind a neutral person. Then there's a difficult person. So you bring to mind someone that you find difficult. And then fifthly, you bring to mind each of those four. We didn't do this part of the practice, but we'll do it a bit later on. You bring to mind each of those four people together, and then you bring to mind all beings. So what's happening with this practice is, like I say, we're really exploring how we build chitta out of Vedana, how we can automatically and habitually just move from a particular kind of Vedana to a particular kind of chitta. So when we move through these different stages, we are likely to experience different Vedanas. So in the friend stage, it's most likely, now it doesn't always happen this way, all sorts of things can arise, but it's most likely that we experience some kind of pleasant Vedana. The reason that our friend is because we like them, we enjoy their company. Now this isn't always the case, but typically that's what happens. You bring to mind your friend and it feels pleasant. And what we're trying to see in this practice is that there's more to our friend than just the fact they make us feel good. Yeah, we're trying to see things from their side, as it were. So we're working with pleasant Vedana, reacting to pleasant Vedana by just wanting more of it and not seeing that there's actually another person there. With the neutral person stage, what we're experiencing is neutral Vedana. Yeah? So we bring to mind someone that doesn't interest us very much, and nothing much happens, nothing much sort of registers with us. So that's neutral Vedana. We're trying to evoke neutral Vedana, and notice that our tendency with neutral Vedana is just to turn to something that we find more interesting. So if you got distracted when we did that, that's quite normal. What we can begin to learn to do is to be interested just because they're alive, just because they're another human being, without there needing to be anything else that kind of gets us interested. And the fourth stage is a difficult person stage. And here what happens is we provoke painful Vedana. So by thinking of that person who we feel has done us wrong in some way, who we feel a grievance towards, we experience that kind of painful Vedana, a painful sense. So in this practice, and we'll do it again later on, we're noticing the Vedana that we have, and we're trying to work with that so that we don't just automatically and habitually produce craving from pleasant Vedana, indifference from neutral Vedana, and hatred or aversion from painful Vedana. So I just wanted to connect that up a little bit with what we've already looked at in the course so far. And I'll pick up this point a little bit later on, but I just want to say that now before we move into our groups, which we'll now do. So we'll have 22 minutes to talk about how our practice has gone since we were together last week. And I'll see you in about 20 minutes. So Daniel, if you could set those groups going now, that'd be brilliant. Right, so there's a few questions. One was wondering whether you think it's best to have eyes open or closed during meditation. Generally, the advice is to meditate with the eyes closed. So that's basically because it reduces the amount of input that's coming into our senses. So if you remember right at the very beginning of this course, one of the things we did is we tried to reduce input. So when we do that, it just makes it easier to respond to creatively what's going on. But it's not a hard and fast rule. Particularly, I think if you're tired, it can be quite a good idea to keep your eyes open so that you don't fall asleep. But it also again, if you find it more conducive to a state of stillness and awareness, then by all means keep your eyes open. Usually the advice is just to let your gaze kind of rest on something, but keep it simple. That's the main thing I'd say. Yeah. Does the feeling always precede the thought, or can feelings arise unprovoked? Well, often the thought precedes the feeling. I mean, usually what happens is experience arises all together. So, for the purposes of understanding what's going on, we sometimes talk about them as a sequence. So, first of all, there's Vedana. So, first of all, there's contact with something, whether it's a thought or an experience. Vedana arises, and then a particular kind of chitta arises of attraction or aversion or equanimity and so on. But usually, when it's actually happening, it all kind of arises at once. So what we're trying to do is distinguish different aspects of our experience in the moment of it arising. So it can happen different ways. Part of what we're trying to do really with Buddhism actually is just to become more and more aware of what our experience actually is. So these ideas that we've been learning, ideas about, the different satipatthanas, body, feelings, mind, dhammas, just help us think in a way which opens out the experience that we're having. That's really what the Dharma is. But the growing point of that is the development of awareness. So you're trying to think about your experience, frame what you're looking at, as it were, in a way that's going to unravel, unpick, to reveal its true nature. We'll look at this a little bit more next week when we look at mindfulness of reality. Oh yeah, so just a reminder that if you want to meditate with others, you can do that through the Dublin Buddhist Centre. We have a meditation every morning at 7:30 for about 50 minutes, and another one at that's Monday to Friday, and also Monday to Friday from 1:15 until 1:45. So there's no leading with the meditation. It's just bells at the beginning and bells at the end. And like all of our events at the moment, we just ask for a donation. There's no charge for that event. So just to remind you of that. And then here's a question. Hi, Nyanadara. I have a few questions. How can we change the negative chitter without being hard on ourselves? So that's a really, really good question. So sometimes you become aware of your state of mind, you become aware of your chitter, and you recognize that it's negative. You recognize that it's unskillful, uncreative, unhelpful. But then what we often do is then we feel bad about that. In a way, we make it worse by reacting to it with aversion. It's a really, really difficult habit to get out of. So this is one of the really important things that we're trying to do. And I think Buddhism gives us a way of understanding something as being unhelpful without needing to feel bad about it or guilty about it. So in a way, it's natural. It's natural that if somebody does something that we find painful to generate hatred from that. That's natural. But we don't have to do that. We can learn a different way of responding that will be more helpful to us. So because it's natural, we don't need to feel bad about it. What we need to do is we need to put something in place that's going to help us to untangle that mess that we've gotten ourselves in. So in a way, it's looking at it in a kind of pragmatic way. So methodologically, in terms of what we actually do, what we're trying to do is find that sense of openness or kindness within that negative chitter. So often with a negative chitter, with that unskillful chitter, there'll be a sense of constriction. There'll be a sense of propuntia, thinking about stuff. So we kind of keep on coming back to the actual feeling and unpick all the secondary thoughts that we're adding onto that, which make it feel more constricted, more painful. So that's the basic kind of method, is by simplifying, you could say, by keeping on coming back to what's actually happening, not what we're thinking about what's happening. So it's quite a hard skill, that, but in a way, it's not. In a way, I think we need to think as much about kindness, and this is where this practice that we're doing tonight comes in, as we do about awareness. The awareness that we cultivate has to have an element of kindness to it, a kind of kindly stance, or a kindly kind of quality to it. Awareness without that can just make things more kind of intense in an unhelpful way. During the Metabhavana, how should we interpret our body sensations? I feel stomach pain and pressure in my chest while I visualize the difficult person. Can we release those body sensations? So in a way, what you've pointed to is something really key. So that's what you're describing is painful Vedana. I felt stomach pain and pressure in my chest while I visualized a difficult person. What's happening there is independence upon your body and mind coming in contact with that difficult person. You're experiencing painful Vedana. So in a way, that's the important thing there is that you've noticed that that's happening. So what we try and do is just, well, simply that, just notice that that's happening and try and relax into that. And that can be actually quite a profound thing. So what we tend to do is we don't notice that we're clenching, and that just becomes the basis of what we do in response to that person. So the first thing we can notice is we're clenching, our stomach's feeling tight or whatever, and then see if we can just relax. We can open to those sensations, realizing that they're just sensations. We don't have to make a big story, a big load of narrative about what's happening. It's just painful Vedana. It's just painful Vedana. So that's one way we can just, by keeping on bringing awareness to them, we can just begin to soften. Now that doesn't mean that we have to be a kind of a doormat to that person, just allow them to treat us in whatever way they want to. We'll always be in a much stronger position if there's kindness present when we're responding to somebody who's difficult or who we're finding difficult. So I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute. I just want to make sure I get all these other questions. Is the idea with a difficult person to change the Vedana to pleasurable? No. So in a way, what the idea with a difficult person is that you're just recognizing the painful Vedana as painful Vedana and not producing aversion from that, which makes it more painful, interestingly. So you're just trying to recognize the painful Vedana as painful Vedana. So it's not that everybody's going to become your best pal. They might, but you're just trying to resist the instinct to produce aversion from painful experience. And the more aware you become, the more you see this going on. How we habitually do that. We habitually produce aversion from painful experiences, painful contact with others. In the same way that, we're just trying to, when you bring to mind our friend, we're not trying to deny the pleasant feeling, but what we're trying to do, and this is the key thing, is we're trying to bring awareness to the fact that there's somebody there. So it's not just that when we're being mindful of others, we're part of that is being aware of our responses to them. Yeah. So that's part of, in a way, what I've been talking about so far is mindfulness of Vedana in relation to other people. But what's really interesting is what we start realizing if we bring awareness to this area is that other people exist from their own side. Yeah. So we know now more and more that we've got a body, that because we've got a body there, we experience, and senses, including the mind, we experience Vedana, pleasant, painful, and neutral, and that then produces, or is one of the conditioning factors for mind to arise. So we know that. What starts happening when we start becoming aware of others is we start becoming aware of the fact that other people have that experience too. Other people exist from their own side. They're not just objects from us, from our point of view. They're subjects from their point of view. So this is a really important thing to see that awareness of others. So I just wanted to, this is what it really means to be aware of others, is not just to be aware that they're there, but that they have experience in the way that we have experience. So I'll just read a little quote. This is a quote from the poet Shelley, the romantic English poet Shelley. And he talks about something, a very, very similar area, about the importance of imagination. So he says the great secret of morals is love, or a going out of our own nature, and an identification of ourselves with the beautiful which exists in thought, action, or person, not our own. A man, to be greatly good, must imagine intensely and comprehensively. He must put himself in the place of another and of many others. The pains and pleasures of his species must become his own. So he's using a lot of masculine pronouns in that statement. It was written a couple of hundred years ago, but we could equally apply that to other women. So men and women, it's the same principle. We're human beings, and we need to try and understand not just that the person is there, but what that person's experience might be. And then that changes it. So this is one of the things that can change hatred. So it's not just that we're sitting there with that person trying not to generate aversion from painful Vedana, but if we're able to really know and really feel and really understand that that person really exists from their own side, it's almost impossible to generate hatred towards them. It just won't happen if we're really aware of them. It's only when we become completely self-referenced that we're able to generate that kind of aversion to the other person. So what I want to do now is actually stop talking for a little while. I know there's a few more questions, which I haven't been able to get to, is actually do that practice again. Now that hopefully we've got a bit more of an understanding about what it is that we're trying to do, we'll do the practice again and explore it, what we've been talking about, what I've been talking about in the context of the actual practice of metta bhavana. So I just invite you to set yourselves up for meditation, and then in a moment we'll make a start. So again, beginning by paying attention to what's going on in your body. And if you've got outstanding questions, see if you can find answers to those questions in the practice itself. And again, starting by being sensitive to what's arising in your body by way of experience and sensation. Feeling your body in contact with the floor, your skin in contact with your clothing. Feel the breath moving through your body. breathing into the belly, breathing into the heart. Just recognize the basic facts of your experience. Like, do you feel well in yourself? Or do you not feel well in yourself? And recognizing that you want to feel well. You want to be happy. You want to be free from anxiety. You want to feel a sense of peace of mind, of a smoothness and a connection with others. So it's that desire for your own well-being which no doubt has led you to engage with this course over these 7 weeks. Not an easy thing to do, but there's a basis of regard for yourself which has meant that you've been willing to do that. So that care for yourself is what we call self-metta. So for the first part of this practice, we sit with that and allow it to develop, to gather. We just sit with kindness, with care, with sensitivity to ourself. We can even say to ourselves, may I be well. Again, saying to ourselves, may I be well. So may that peace, happiness, and so on that I long for, may it come to pass. And then bringing to mind a friend. So the general advice is to choose somebody who you're not sexually attracted to, simply because that makes it more complicated. So choosing somebody who's a good friend, about your age, who you like. And just really getting as vivid a sense of your friend as you can in whatever way is natural to you. So there's no right way of doing this. If you're not a natural visualizer, if you don't think visually, don't worry. You could just think of their physical presence or even simply say that person's name to yourself. And just notice what happens when you bring them to mind. There'll be some kind of a Vedana, some kind of thought, some kind of emotion. So what is that? What happens? So we might feel certain things in relation to them, but in a way that person exists completely independently of our feelings about them. They exist from their side. We try and know that, acknowledge that, be aware of that, as well as aware of our response to them. They also want for their well-being. And so we wish them well. We can say, may you be well. And letting that person move into the background now. So letting them just dissolve back into the background. And again, just relaxing into ourself. Particularly paying attention to the area around our heart. And then bringing to mind a neutral person. You could just choose the same person that you thought of in the meditation earlier this evening. And notice what it's like to do that. Notice the Vedana. And if nothing much happens, or doesn't appear to happen, that's neutral Vedana. It's like an absence of response, of pleasure or pain. And yet, that neutral person who's neutral to us feels from their side. They have Vedanas of all kinds, moods, chitters of all kinds of experiences, the whole range of human experience. And we can also wish them well, include them in our metta, actively imagining life from their side. We can express that active intention by saying, "May you be well." And then just letting that person move into the background, and again, just connecting with how you are, just relaxing into how you are. And then bring into mind someone that you find difficult. Bringing them to mind as vividly as you can. And notice what happens as you do that. If there's a clenching or a gripping, see if you can relax into that. You could even just breathe into that. If a narrative starts off in your mind, a memory of painful events, of conversations or arguments, try and just come back to your body and anchor yourself there and soften into whatever painfulness arises. Remembering that if there's an event, it's actually already gone. You don't have to relive it or remake it in your mind. And remembering that that person exists from their side, so they feel and think and emote, as it were, from their side. We try and see that too. We try and imaginatively identify with them and the reality of their experience of being alive. we can say to that person, may you be well. We don't have to pretend that we like them. We don't have to pretend that everything they do is okay with us, but we can wish them well. We can allow whatever tension or holding or pain is there to soften. We might like to reflect on how freeing it would be if we could experience difficulty with others, and for that not to lead to resentment and aversion. How free would our mind be if that were the case? And now just letting that person also fade into the background, just be with yourself as you now are. And then calling to mind each of the four people that we've thought of thus far in this practice. So there's yourself, just rekindling, refreshing an awareness of yourself and your desire for well-being. Refresh your sense of your friend. Refresh yourself, your friend, the neutral person, the difficult person. And then thinking of your family. So letting that awareness imbued with kindness, that metta, flow out towards them too. Thinking of your friends. And just let people come naturally to you. You might like to include as well a sense of the other people on this course this evening. There's about 50 of us meditating in different parts. And then just getting a sense of all the people that live in this city, in this country. No doubt many people are having a bit of a rough ride right now. So you're just getting a sense that you're part of the human community, as it were. You're part of a whole community of people, all of whom want the best for themselves, who feel pleasure, who feel pain. And then just sit. So just for a minute, we'll just sit, absorbing what we've been doing for the last few minutes. So that's an introduction to the Metta Bhavana practice. Some of you will have done it before. Hopefully, this will give you a slightly different perspective on it when looking at it in terms of Vedana, how we're working with Vedana by acknowledging it and recognizing that there's somebody there. It's not just a feeling for us, there's actually somebody else there. And that's the crucial element of awareness of others, that there's actually another consciousness there. There's another center of experience. And it's in a way quite fascinating when you start really being aware of that as a reality in your life. In a way, the possibilities for what we can understand are massively amplified, which I think is what Shelley was getting at in that quote, where he says, to be greatly good, a man must imagine intensely and comprehensively. He must put himself in the place of another and of many others. The pains and pleasures of his species must become his own. So that's how you become greatly good. That's how you develop. Really, really crucial, and a crucial aspect of any genuine development of mindfulness. So in terms of the home practice this week, it's really quite simple. So you've got your daily meditation and so on. Remembering, like I said last week, that just focus on the things that you've done, that you're doing. Don't worry about all the other things that you haven't managed to get to. Just focus on what you're actually doing. And this week, what we're going to try and do is not be aware of absolutely everybody in the whole world, but be aware of two people. Yeah. So be aware of a friend. Someone that you'll be in touch with ideally this week. I mean, mind you, it might be a virtual being in touch with, probably will be. Um, so yeah, so somebody, just a good friend of yours, and just be extra aware of them. Um, try and bring them to mind during the course of your day. It might be somebody that you live with, um, and just be aware of them. Be a little bit more aware of them. Remember them. So maybe if you're doing your mindful walk, you might like to just bring them to mind. You might like to reflect on what it is that you appreciate about them. What are their good qualities? It's actually an exceedingly positive thing to do, is just to think of a person and reflect on what it is that you appreciate about them. You could also be aware, so that's be aware of your friend, be aware of a difficult person as well. So maybe the person that you just thought of. Don't tell them that you're doing it. And again, try and practice this kind of imaginative identification, this imaginative sympathy. So, how does it feel? How does their body feel to them? Do they seem tense or relaxed? What Vedana are they experiencing? What states of mind do they inhabit? What values are they trying to express in their lives? Just trying to kind of imagine what it's like to be inside that person's experience, inside their life. Yes, so that's there's more about this in the book, as there's more about this whole area in the book. But it's really an invitation to just be more aware of others, being more aware of two people in particular, a friend and someone you find difficult. And what I'd recommend you do is you carry on with this meditation practice. So you might like to alternate the meditation practice that we did last week, the 4-stage mindfulness of breathing, with this stage, the metta bhavana. And just to point out that at the end of the book, there's full descriptions of both of these practices. And what you could do if you want is you could just follow that second lead through that I did as part of the class just there. One thing, so those are your 2 things to practice this week. One thing you might like to start thinking about is where you're going to go to next. So this course is almost finished. So there's just one more week to go next week. That's week 8. So there's lots of other things that are going on around the centre. There's regular events, like there's a Buddhist ritual happening actually in the room next door. Also online. And I just wanted to mention that I'm doing a course starting in November. It's a 5-week course, and it's looking at this practice, the metta bhavana, and going into it in a lot of depth. And the course is intended for people who've never done the practice before, but it's also intended for people who have, to try and really get to grips with what's going on. It's both quite a difficult practice, but it's also a profoundly transformative practice. So if you want to explore it more, then we'll have details about that course next week for you. So if you want to, you can book onto it. So that's happening in the middle of November. And just to remind you before we, 2 things really, just to remind you that if you want to make a donation, just to remind you that we're doing everything at the Buddhist Centre for free at the moment. We're not charging for anything. So please help us to do that. Please help us keep things free. We really, really want to keep doing that. So if you could help us, that'd be brilliant. And also, if you've got questions, maybe I didn't quite get to your questions. I know there's a couple I didn't get to. Please hang on after the class, and I'll try and respond to them then. Other than that, I look forward to seeing you next week.